She hadn't meant to stop that day. The wind had been sharp, the sky gray, and there was no need for supplies. No need for nails, flour, or even bread. Not anymore. Not since the last grave had been dug. But something in the air changed. A shift so small most would miss it. She felt it settle in her bones like a whisper, and before she realized, her hands had already turned the horse down the path toward the town square. And that's where she saw them. 3 boys, sacks tied over their heads, hands bound behind their backs. They stood silent and still beside a wooden post. A crooked sign hung in front of them. Orphans, $3 each. No names. No questions. It was the kind of thing that should have turned stomachs. But no one flinched. The crowd looked on like it was normal. Emily Boone stepped off her wagon. Her boots hit the dirt with a sharp thud. A few heads turned, most didn't. The townsfolk had grown used to ignoring the widow. She came in twice a month, said nothing, bought what she needed, and left without a word. Always in black. Always alone. But that day, she didn't go to the general store. She didn't buy candles or oats. She walked straight toward the post where the boys stood, and this time, every head turned. Not because she looked strange, but because her eyes did. The auctioneer, a red-faced man in a sweat-stained vest, cleared his throat. "Ma'am, you looking to take one?" Emily didn't answer. The tallest boy swayed slightly. He looked around 12. His knees buckled, but he didn't fall. The others didn't move. $3 apiece, the man said again. "Got a farmer who wants to train one for sheep herding." Emily stepped closer, still silent. "They ain't house-trained, if that's what you're a skin." The man chuckled nervously. "Don't talk. Don't cry. Ain't ate since sunrise." Seller said, "Keep the sacks on. Don't want 'em looking folks in the eye. Makes 'em harder to return." She reached in her coat and pulled out an old leather pouch. Inside, 6 silver coins and a folded piece of paper that still held the scent of lavender and dust. She placed the coins in the man's palm. "All 3, she said. Her voice was dry, quiet. He blinked. "Pardon." "Untie them." The crowd went quiet. A woman in a faded shawl clutched her basket tighter. A boy in suspenders backed away a step. The man hesitated, then muttered something and stepped forward. With a pocket knife, he cut the ropes from each boy's head. One by one, the sacks fell. The oldest had pale blue eyes and a clenched jaw. He didn't flinch. The middle one had a bruise under his eye and a scab on his lip. His gaze darted around but never settled. The smallest, no older than 6, looked straight at Emily, and he whispered, "Mrs. Boone." He didn't say it with fear, not with surprise, just certainty. The silence broke. A murmur passed through the crowd. Someone asked, "How'd he know her?" Emily didn't answer. She stepped forward, placed a hand on the youngest boy's shoulder, then on the other 2. "Come," she said. The auctioneer called after her. "You don't even know their names." She didn't turn around. "I don't need their names," she said. "I just need them alive." The ride home was silent. The boys sat in the back of the wagon, knees pulled to their chests, eyes on the road. Emily didn't offer them food. Not yet. She knew better than to rush comfort. Sometimes it scared the ones who'd been hurt the worst. Her house sat at the edge of the valley. The windows were dirty. The barn leaned west. The garden had withered. But it stood, and it was hers. When the wagon stopped, she spoke just once. Inside, the eldest jumped down first and helped the others. They followed her like shadows, quiet as breath. Inside, the stove still held some heat. She set water to boil and pulled flour from the cupboard. "Sit." They obeyed. She stirred with one hand, watched them with the other. "What's your name?" she asked the youngest. He looked down. "Milo." She nodded. "Yours?" she asked the boy with the bruise. "Harris." The eldest stared at her for a moment before saying, "Beck." She turned back to the stove and spooned batter onto the hot pan. "I'm Emily." She glanced at Milo. "You said my name. How'd you know it?" He shrugged. "Did someone tell you?" "No." "Did we meet before?" He shook his head. "Then how?" Milo looked at her with the eyes of a boy too young to lie, too old to believe in dreams. "I heard it in my sleep," he said. "A lady whispered it. She said, 'Emily Boone will come. She'll take you home.'" The batter sizzled. Beck's shoulders stiffened. Harris looked down. Emily didn't speak. "What lady?" she asked. "She didn't say her name," Milo murmured. "But she sounded like you." Silence stretched thick in the room. Then Beck stood. "If you're going to hurt us," he said, "do it fast. Don't drag it out." Emily didn't flinch. "I won't hurt you," she replied. "They all say that." "Well," she said, flipping the pancake, "I won't say it again." They ate like wolves. No words, just the scrape of forks and the hollow clink of mugs. When it was over, she laid blankets by the hearth. "You sleep here tonight. Clean clothes are in the chest. If you run, I won't chase you. But I'll leave the lantern on." She turned to go, then paused. "Tomorrow," she said, "we'll talk about what comes next." But they didn't sleep, and neither did she, because Milo's words echoed louder in the dark than any dream ever had. Words she'd whispered once by her husband's grave, so quiet she wasn't sure even God had heard them. "Let someone need me again. Let someone say my name." And now someone had, and everything was about to change. The sun hadn't risen yet, but Emily was already awake. She hadn't slept, not really. She just sat there in the dark, hands around a mug of lukewarm tea, watching the fire fade. The boys hadn't moved much. Milo was curled closest to the hearth, tiny hand resting near his mouth like it was holding back a secret. Harris lay stiff as a board, arms crossed over his chest like someone expecting to be pulled away. Beck sat against the far wall, knees drawn up, eyes locked on the front door. None of them spoke. Emily stood quietly and walked to the stove. She poured water from the kettle into a basin, rolled up her sleeves, and began mixing soap. She didn't ask who was hungry. She didn't ask who needed clean clothes. Some things didn't need questions. She folded a few shirts and trousers, laid them on the bench by the fire. "Barn has water and a little privacy," she said, her voice steady. "Towels are in the red box. Beck, you go first. Then Harris. Milo, you're last. Don't come back inside until you're clean." They didn't move. Not at first. Beck stared at her. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I want to." He blinked like he didn't believe her. "People don't do things just because they want to. Not for boys like us." She met his eyes. "That's because people forget how much kindness costs." He didn't reply, but he stood up, took the clothes, and disappeared through the back door. By the time Harris followed, Emily was slicing apples into a pot of oats, adding cinnamon she'd been saving for a day that never came. Milo lingered in the doorway. "Can I keep my name?" he asked, voice small. She looked up. "Why wouldn't you?" He shrugged. "Some folks change them. If they take you in." "I won't." He smiled just a little. "Good. I think God gave it to me." She felt something move in her chest. She didn't show it. "You warm enough?" He nodded. "Then go on, Milo. Water's cold, but it'll wake you up." He turned and ran barefoot toward the barn. The sun was just beginning to climb when they came back, one by one. Their hair damp, shirts too big, hands red from scrubbing. Beck was the last. He stood at the edge of the room, unsure whether to sit or wait. "I'll do chores," he said. "You don't have to. I want to." That changed things. Emily led him outside, showed him where the tools were kept, where the henhouse leaned from a raccoon's damage, and where the garden used to be before the weeds took it over. Beck didn't ask questions. He just nodded and got to work. She sent Harris to stack firewood. Milo followed her around the house, folding sheets, collecting dishes, doing the small things that made a place feel less empty. It wasn't a perfect day. Milo dropped a plate when she raised her voice too suddenly about mud on the floor. Harris wouldn't meet her eyes. Beck didn't come in for lunch. But by sunset, there was warmth in the house again, a kind that hadn't been there in years. Then someone knocked. 3 short knocks. Emily froze. The boys looked up. No one moved. She opened the door and found Reverend Jacob Stokes on the porch. Tall, dressed in black, hands folded even when he wasn't praying. "Afternoon, Emily," he said. "Heard what happened in town. They said you took them." "I brought them home," she said, stepping outside. "Didn't think it was really you. Some folks say you've gone soft. Others say you've lost your mind." "Maybe I have. They're not strays, Emily. They've been passed around more than most animals. One of them, Beck, broke a man's nose. He won't be breaking mine." He watched her closely, then sighed. "Want me to help get them registered? Make it official." "Not yet. I need to know they'll stay. I wouldn't count on it. With their past." She looked past him toward the hills. "Then I'll give them a new one." He smiled faintly. "Still stubborn, I see." I learned from the best. He tipped his hat. Just be sure you know what you're doing. 1 boy's hard. 3? That's the resurrection. Emily didn't reply. Inside, Milo peeked from behind the curtain. Who was that? He asked when she returned. Someone who worries too much. He's scared. Of what? What might happen to us? So, am I, she admitted. That night, she brought out her old Bible and set it on the table. The boys watched. She didn't explain. She didn't need to. I read from this when I was a girl, she said softly. Sometimes it helped. Sometimes it didn't. But it reminded me I wasn't alone. They didn't answer. So she read anyway. He setteth the solitary in families. He bringeth out those which are bound with chains. When she closed the book, Milo was asleep with his head on the table. Harris was curled near the fire. Beck was awake, but no longer watching the door. He was watching her. Emily blew out the lantern. And for the first time in years, the silence in her house didn't feel like grief. It felt like the start of something worth fighting for. The scream tore through the dark like a blade. It wasn't a dream whimper or a restless cry. It was deep, raw, ripped from the center of something no child should carry. Emily was already on her feet before her mind caught up. Her nightgown twisted around her ankles as she stumbled down the hallway, heart slamming against her ribs. The boys' room door was open. Inside, Beck thrashed in his blanket, soaked in sweat, one hand clawing at the air like he was reaching through fire. His eyes were shut tight, but his mouth was wide, gasping, choking on the scream still echoing from his chest. Milo was sitting up in his cot, hands pressed to his ears. Harris stood frozen by the window, back stiff, too scared to move. Beck, Emily called, sharp but not harsh. Wake up. He didn't. His limbs jerked, his face twisted in panic. Words started coming between the cries, shattered and begging. Please, no, stop. Don't again, please. Emily didn't hesitate. She crossed the room, dropped to her knees beside him, and gripped his shoulders firmly. Beck, you're safe. It's me. You're home. His eyes snapped open. His whole body went still like someone had poured ice down his spine. Then he jerked back so fast he nearly fell off the bed. Don't touch me, he shouted, breathing like he'd been drowning. It's me, she said again, her voice even. It was just a dream. You're safe now. He looked around the room like he didn't recognize it, chest heaving, lips parted like he couldn't figure out how to breathe. Milo let out a small, broken sob, trying not to cry but failing. Beck covered his face. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't mean to wake anyone. Harris stepped forward, quiet but steady now. He does this sometimes, he said. Not always that loud, but sometimes. Should I sleep in the barn? Beck asked. I'll be quiet. I swear. Just don't make them leave me. No one's going anywhere, Emily said. Especially not you. He slowly lowered his hands. I scared him, he said, nodding toward Milo. It's okay, Milo said softly, wiping his nose with his sleeve. I have bad dreams too. Beck looked down. A dream he came back. That man. I don't remember his name. Just his boots. He always smelled like rope. I thought I was back there. Emily's throat tightened, but she didn't let it show. You're not, she said. I know, he replied quietly. But it didn't feel that way. No one spoke after that. The only sound was the wind pressing against the windows, soft and steady like it was trying to listen in. Let's make tea, she said, standing. Tea? Harris asked, confused. It helps, Emily said. It reminds us where we really are. They followed her to the kitchen, still wrapped in blankets. She lit the lantern, boiled the water, and let each boy choose a mug. Milo took the one with faded blue flowers. Harris picked the plain gray one. Beck didn't reach until she handed him one herself, a battered tin cup with a dent in the rim. They sat at the table in silence, sipping slowly. Beck's hands shook a little, but his breathing calmed. Harris glanced at him now and then, like he was keeping watch without making it obvious. Milo was the one who finally spoke. Are nightmares memories? Emily paused before answering. They're what memories become when we try to forget them too fast. The room settled again. None of them returned to bed. They just sat, letting the tea warm their hands, waiting for the sun. Later that morning, Emily handed Beck an axe. He looked at it, confused. You want me to chop wood? I want you to do something that makes your arms tired and your mind quiet. But you're not touching that pile until I show you how. He smirked faintly. You think I'll mess it up? I know you will, she said, which is why I'm teaching you first. She showed him how to hold the handle, how not to angle the blade. Beck listened, focused. It was the first time he looked like he belonged to something. By noon, he was sweating. The pile of kindling was growing. Not perfect, but enough. Harris helped in the garden. He worked slow, steady, handling roots and weeds like they were fragile. When he found a worm, he moved it gently to the side. Did you ever have a family? He asked quietly. I did, Emily said. Where are they now? Gone. He didn't say anything after that. Just nodded, kept digging. Inside, Milo swept the floor. Not because anyone told him to, but because he liked the sound of the broom. He hummed softly to himself, just little bits of songs he half remembered. This little light of mine, he mumbled over and over. Emily heard it, and later, without thinking, she hummed the same tune while she baked. 3 days passed, then 4, then a week. The boys began to shift. Harris started reading aloud by the fire. He stumbled over words, but Milo clapped every time. Beck stopped waiting to be told what to do. He just did it. She once found him fixing a hinge on the barn door. When she asked who taught him how, he said, You did. Last week with the gate. Milo started leaving small crayon drawings under her pillow, always scribbled with crooked lines and colors that didn't match. But she was always in them. And in the corner, he always wrote the same word, home. It wasn't perfect. One afternoon, Harris came home with a black eye. What happened? She asked. Nothing. Don't lie to me. Town boys, he said, called us trash. Said Beck was a thief. I told them to shut up. They didn't like that. Did Beck fight back? No. He just stood there. Why didn't you run? He shrugged. We don't run anymore. Emily knelt and touched his bruised cheek. You're brave, she said, and a little stupid. He smiled, just barely. That night, she made stew and let them sit closer to the fire than usual. Beck didn't say much, but he slid Harris an extra slice of bread when he thought no one was looking. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by steam and firelight, Emily realized something she hadn't dared believe for a long, long time. They were starting to heal. The next morning, a letter came. It was postmarked from town. The envelope was thin, but the handwriting on the front stopped Emily cold. She knew that style, tight, careful, legal. She opened it slowly, already guessing what it would say. It was from the county. She read it twice, then folded it and slipped it into her apron. At breakfast, the boys were quiet, chewing slowly, half asleep from the cold morning air. Emily waited until the dishes were cleared before she spoke. I've been asked to bring you into town, she said. All three froze. Why? Beck asked. They want to ask you some questions. To make sure I'm fit, that you're doing well. We don't want to go, Milo said, already holding his spoon tighter. You don't have to stay, Emily said gently. But you do have to come with me. We have to show them what this place is. What we've built. Beck stood first. His voice was calm, but there was fire in it. If they try to take us, they won't, she said firmly. Not if we show them who you are. Not what they've heard. Not the boys who were passed around like sacks of grain, but the truth. The ones who build a home here. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Harris nodded. All right. The ride into town was long and quiet. Emily drove the wagon, hands tied on the reins. Milo sat between Beck and Harris, clutching Beck's sleeve like a lifeline. The courthouse stood tall ahead of them, like a stone reminder of everything they had come from. Inside, it smelled like dust and old ink. The clerk looked over his glasses as they entered. These the boys? He asked. Emily didn't answer. She just nodded. The man pulled out a form and began asking questions. Do you sleep through the night? Most nights, Harris replied. Do you get meals? Yes, Milo said softly. Do you feel safe? Beck didn't answer right away. His throat worked hard before he finally said, yes. His voice cracked on the word, but then he lifted his chin and repeated it louder. Yes. The clerk leaned back in his chair. You're lucky, he said. She could have left you where you were. Most folks would have. She didn't take us in, Beck said. The man looked confused. Didn't she? We chose her, Beck replied. The man didn't have anything to say after that. That evening, when they returned home, Emily found something waiting on her bed. Another one of Milo's crayon drawings. 4 stick figures standing outside a crooked house. Smoke rising from the chimney, stars above the roof. One word written in big, messy letters at the top, found. Emily sat down on the edge of her bed and cried. Not the quiet kind. Not the kind you hide. Real tears, heavy and long. She didn't wipe them away. She didn't try to explain. The boys didn't ask why. They just stayed near her, quiet, letting her feel it, the same way she'd let them. The first snow came early that year. It came without warning, just a soft drift at first, the kind that looked like lace on the trees. But by morning, the hills had disappeared beneath a white blanket, and the house was still and bright under the gray sky. Emily stood on the porch in her shawl, her breath rising like smoke. She watched the wind dance through the trees. Inside, the boys huddled near the stove, sharing one thick blanket like it was gold. Milo pressed his face to the window. "Is it cold?" he asked. "Freezing," Beck answered, not even looking up from the book he was holding. "Can I touch it?" "You can," Beck said. "But don't go out there without boots, or your toes will snap off like sticks." Milo laughed, but didn't move. Beck always spoke in that same way, half serious, half teasing. And Milo was still too young to know the difference. Emily turned from a porch. "Breakfast," she called. "Hot biscuits. But only if you set the table right." Beck stood first, always the one to take the lead now. Milo rushed behind him, still staring at the flakes falling outside. They all sat down with steam rising from their plates, and no one said a word. But it wasn't a hard silence anymore. It was a warm one. While they ate, Emily found herself watching them. Just watching. Their shoulders relaxed, their hands steady, their eyes clearer than they had been a month ago. Beck caught her looking. "Why are you staring at us like that?" She hesitated. "I'm just proud." The room went still for a second. Then Milo reached across the table and grabbed her hand. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. That afternoon, they built a snowman in the yard. No one told them to. Milo just insisted they had to. Said it wasn't real winter until they did. "He needs arms," Milo said, circling the lumpy figure. "And a hat," Harris added. "Give him yours," Milo said to Beck. "No way. My ears will freeze off. You're the one who wanted a snowman." "I didn't say he needed to hear anything," Milo shot back with a grin. Beck laughed. A real one, loud and quick. Harris showed up with 2 sticks and an old tin lid from the barn. They gave the snowman arms and a crooked head. Emily stood on the porch again, sipping tea, watching them through the steam. Their laughter echoed through the trees. Their boots crunched in the snow. And for the first time in years, it sounded like the world hadn't ended. By sunset, the boys came inside soaked, cheeks red, grinning like they'd stolen the sun. Emily made stew. They peeled off wet layers and hung them by the fire. Milo wrapped himself in her old shawl. Beck brought out a deck of cards. "Who wants to lose tonight?" he challenged. "You always cheat," Harris said. "You just always lose." Same thing. They played 3 games, then fell asleep in a pile of limbs and laughter on the floor. How only brothers sleep, real or chosen. Emily didn't move them. She pulled another blanket from the shelf and covered all 3. Then she sat beside the fire, listening to the wind howl outside. But the house didn't creak. It didn't shake. It held. Emily rode into town alone 5 days later. Supplies were running low, flour, matches, a little salt, and the boys were busy patching the henhouse after something tore through in the night. It was meant to be a quick trip, in and out, but as soon as she stepped inside the general store, she knew something was wrong. Gerald, the man behind the counter, stopped stacking jars. His face twitched in a way she hadn't seen before. "What is it?" she asked, voice low. He scratched the back of his neck, uneasy. "A man came through earlier. Said he was looking for some boys. Had papers. Said he was family." Emily's chest tightened. "What kind of papers?" "Didn't show him to me. Just waved a folder around, real sure of himself. Didn't give a name. Rode off before I could ask." "Which way?" Gerald glanced toward the east road. "That way. Toward your place." She didn't wait. She didn't pack the supplies or tie them down. She just climbed on her wagon and snapped the reins hard. Her old mare galloped harder than she had in years, snow and slush spraying behind as the wheels skidded on the road. The wind stung her cheeks, but she didn't feel it. Her breath came sharp and fast, but her focus never broke. She crested the final hill. The cabin came into view. A horse was tied outside. Not theirs. Emily jumped down before the wagon stopped, boots sinking into the wet ground. The door was open. Inside, all three boys stood in a row, Beck, Harris, and Milo, silent and stiff. A man stood in front of them, tall, pale, a thin mustache that curled too carefully. One hand held a folder. The other held something worse, a burlap sack, the same kind they'd worn when she first saw them. "Step away from them," Emily said, her voice cold, steady. The man turned slowly, smiling like someone who had already won. "You must be the widow," he said. "You must be confused. These boys belong to someone." "They're not yours," Emily replied. He opened the folder. "Ward transfer papers. Signed by Judge Hammond. 2 counties over. I paid good money." "You paid for flesh," she said. "Not family." He tilted his head like she'd amused him. "That's a pretty word for stolen property." Beck stepped forward, his fists clenched. "Say that again," he said, voice shaking. "I dare you." The man laughed. "You think you can fight me, boy?" "I already did," Beck replied. "You're a dog," the man sneered. "All of you. Wild little animals." "Then we bite," Harris said, stepping up beside Beck. Milo stayed, close to Emily, one hand clenched around her coat. The man reached into his jacket. Emily didn't wait. Her husband's old rifle was already in her hands. "Try it," she said. He froze, hand halfway to whatever he'd been reaching for. "You wouldn't." "I would," she cut in. "I'm scared, but that doesn't mean I won't pull the trigger." For a long second, no one moved. Then slowly, the man lowered his hand. He backed away, tying the sack back to his saddle. "You'll regret this," he said. "People always find out." "They already did," Emily replied. "And they left them with me." He mounted his horse and rode off. She didn't lower the rifle until his hoofbeats disappeared into the trees. That night, the boys sat close by the fire, still shaken. Milo's hands trembled when he reached for his tea. Beck's jaw was locked tight. Harris stared into the flames like he was trying to see something hidden in the coals. "They'll come back," Beck said finally. "Maybe," Emily replied. "But we'll be ready. Next time we fight." "No," she said, her voice firm. "Next time, we stay together." "They think we're weak," Harris said quietly. "Then let them think it," she replied. "It's easier to surprise them that way." Beck gave a dry laugh, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. The next morning, she didn't leave them behind. She took all 3 boys into town, marched them straight into the courthouse. The judge looked up as they entered. Emily dropped the folder the man had left onto his desk. "I didn't sign these," the judge said, adjusting his glasses. "Judge Hammond? He retired 2 years ago. Someone's forging documents and trying to snatch children with them," Emily added. "You said you'd help." "Well, I'm not here for promises. I want names, and I want peace." The judge nodded. He looked at the boys, then back at her. "You've got both." On the way home, Emily rode with one arm around Milo's shoulders. He didn't speak. He just leaned into her like he was trying to remember what safe felt like. That winter passed like a long breath. The days were short. The nights were quiet. The boys learned to bake. Beck built a sled. Harris read every book in the attic. Milo began writing his name on anything he could find. One morning, he wrote something else. Not Milo. Not home. He wrote Martha. He scrawled it in chalk on the wall, crooked and proud. She found it after lunch. She didn't say a word. She just stood there for a while, fingers brushing the chalk letters. And then, for the second time that winter, she cried. Real tears. Because this quiet, steady life they were building, it wasn't just for them anymore. It was for her too. Spring arrived like a whisper. The garden, once brown and bare, was starting to breathe again. Soft green shoots pushed through the dirt, and the air smelled like something old was being washed away. Emily moved between the rows in her boots, sleeves rolled to her elbows, a basket tucked under one arm. Her hum was soft, slow, like she didn't even realize she was doing it. Milo followed behind her, his small basket wobbling under the weight of early cabbage. His handwriting had improved. His RS still leaned the wrong way sometimes, but he wrote his name clearly now, always in the top corner of every scrap of paper she gave him. "Martha," he said as he walked. "Can we cook all this today?" She glanced down at him. You want cabbage stew again? He nodded. It's Beck's birthday soon. We should make something special. That's not for 2 more weeks. Then we've got time to make it perfect. She smiled, brushing dirt off a head of lettuce. We'll think of something. Up near the chicken coop, Beck and Harris worked in rhythm. Lifting, hammering, checking the wire. The two of them barely spoke while they worked, but they didn't need to. Beck had grown taller since winter. His sleeves didn't quite reach his wrists now. Harris's voice had deepened a little, just enough for Emily to notice, even when he tried to hide it. Time wasn't rushing anymore. It was stretching out, soft and steady, and you could feel in your bones if you stood still long enough. But peace never stays forever. The first warning came on a quiet evening, just after the sun went down. Emily stepped outside to check the porch light and found a folded piece of paper wedged in the crack of the door. No name, no return address, just careful handwriting. You stole them. That won't be forgotten. She burned the letter in the fireplace. She didn't tell the boys. 2 weeks later, something worse. 1 chicken missing. Then a goat found dead, neck snapped, body untouched. No blood, no drag marks. Beck found it first and buried it before Milo could see. I think it was wolves, Harris said. Beck shook his head. Wolves don't kill and leave it. Someone's sending a message. Emily didn't argue. That night, she loaded the rifle and locked the doors. When Beck's birthday finally came, the sky was dark and heavy. Thunder rolled across the hills like a warning. They lit every candle in the house and ate by the soft flicker of flame. Milo gave Beck a wooden whistle he'd carved himself. Harris had stitched a small leather pouch, perfect for nails and tools. Emily gave him a coat, dark wool, neatly stitched. It had belonged to her husband once. Now it fit Beck almost exactly. I can't take this, he said quietly, looking at everything but her. You already have, she said. He wore it the next morning. That was the day the dog came. A yellow-eyed mutt, ribs showing through thin fur, wandered to the edge of the field just before noon. It didn't bark. It didn't move. It just stared at the house from the tree lean. Milo saw it through the kitchen window. Dog, he whispered, tugging Martha's sleeve. She stepped over and squinted. Her jaw tightened. Not a good sign. Outside, Beck had already stepped off the porch. She banged on glass. Go back inside, she said. Now. But Beck didn't move. I just want to see. Then the dog turned and ran. Not toward them. Away. And just as it vanished into the woods, the sound came. Gunfire. 1 shot. Then a pause. Then 3 more. Beck dropped flat to the ground. Inside, Harris grabbed Milo and pulled him from the window. Emily stood frozen, her ears ringing. She knew that pattern. 1 warning, 1 reel, 2 more to show they weren't playing. Someone was out there, watching, waiting. They didn't sleep that night. They ate cold bread in the kitchen, the boys far from the windows. Beck kept the rifle across his lap, his eyes sharp but tired. He looked too grown in that moment, too still, like he'd already made up his mind about how far he'd go to protect what they had. Do you think they'll come tonight? Harris asked. No, Emily said. Cowards don't come in the dark. They wait for daylight. So they waited. Day came. Nothing. Day 2. Still quiet. On the 4th day, food ran low. Beck offered first. I can go. I'm faster. You're a boy, Emily said. They're looking for you. She took the long trail into town herself, avoiding the road, keeping low in the woods. The trip took hours longer, but it was safer. Still, when she returned, her face was pale. What is it? Harris asked. There's a man in town. New. Keeps asking if I live alone. You tell anyone? I didn't need to. The sheriff sent him off. But he wasn't alone. That night, she opened a box she hadn't touched in years. Inside, her husband's old revolver, a box of bullets, and a hand-drawn map. She laid it out across the table. There's a safe place, she said. 3 valleys over. Church-run homestead. If I leave tonight, I can talk to the pastor before morning. You're going alone? Harris asked. I need someone to stay here, in case I don't come back. We're not leaving, Beck said. If they come, Emily said, they'll be looking for me. Not you. Still, he didn't back down. In the end, she left at dusk. A satchel of dry bread, the revolver strapped to her hip, and Hope riding hard beside her. But she didn't get far. She was less than 10 miles out when she heard them. At first, it was just a faint sound of hoofbeats, distant, scattered. Then a whistle cut through the trees. Not a bird. A signal. Her heart sank. She turned her horse down a narrow trail along the creek, trying to keep the noise low. But they were faster. Within the hour, 3 riders surrounded her. Dust-colored coats. Faces half-covered. Guns drawn. She didn't stop. She didn't flinch. Just slowed her horse and looked the lead man in the eye. "Where you headed, ma'am?" he asked, circling her like a hawk. "Church," she said. "Not that it's any of your business." "Maybe not. But those boys you've been harboring, well, that is." "Harboring," she spat. "They were thrown away. I gave them a home. You stole them from someone who paid for them. Then maybe the system's broken." The man chuckled, low and amused. "Maybe it is. Doesn't change the law. Then maybe the law is broken too." She reached slowly for her revolver. "Careful now," he warned, raising a brow. "Don't go doing something you'll regret." "I've already lost everything once," she said. "I'm not afraid to fight for what's mine." He raised his hand and whistled again. For more riders stepped from the trees behind her. She didn't fire. She didn't run. Instead, she dismounted. "You'll have to drag me," she said. "I'm not going anywhere with men like you." "You won't need to," the leader said, and without warning, he struck her hard across the jaw. She hit the ground, and the world went dark. Back at the cabin, the boys waited. 1 day passed. Then 2. By the 3rd, Beck couldn't sit still. "She wouldn't leave us," he said. "Not like this." "Maybe the weather slowed her down," Harris said, though he didn't believe it. "Or she got hurt. Or turned around." "She didn't get lost," Beck snapped. "Something happened." He opened the box she'd left behind. Inside was the second revolver, another map, and a list of names, contacts from the church homestead. "We go after her," he said. "We can't leave Milo," Harris replied. "I'm coming," Milo said, looking up from where he sat on the floor. "I'm strong enough." "You're not," Beck started. "I don't care," Milo interrupted. "She's my mom." That stopped them both. None of them had said it out loud before. But there it was. Simple. True. They left the next morning. They didn't take much, just what they could carry. Beck carried the map, the revolver strapped to his hip. It looked too big on him, but he held it like it belonged there. Harris brought a knife and a coil of rope. Milo had his slingshot across his chest, more for comfort than anything else. They followed her trail through the hills. At the halfway point, they found the horse. Shot through the chest. No rider. No bags. A streak of blood led away from the path, winding through the dirt into the trees. "She's alive," Milo said, kneeling beside the blood. "I know she is." Neither Beck nor Harris argued. Believing otherwise wasn't an option. The trail was rough. Thorns tore at their legs. The climb grew steep, the air thinner. Harris spotted a small boot print beside the creek, too narrow for a man. A drag mark followed behind it. Beck knelt beside it, his fingers brushing the dirt. "She's close." Then they saw it. A cabin, hidden deep in the hills, tucked behind a curtain of trees. The boards were crooked. The chimney gave off thin smoke. And hanging from a nail on the porch was a red scarf. Emily's. "She's in there," Milo whispered. "Could be a trap," Harris warned. "We can't wait," Beck replied. They crept forward. The porch groaned under Beck's boots. He motioned for Milo to stay behind the trees. Harris followed close, knife in hand. The door was cracked open. Beck leaned in, listening. Nothing. He pushed it slowly. Inside, the air was thick with dust and smoke. A table lay on its side. A broken chair. Coils of rope near the corner. And there, tied to the bedpost, was Emily. Her dress was torn at the shoulder. Her wrists red and raw. A bruise bloomed under her eye. But her eyes were open. And when she saw Beck, she smiled. "I knew you'd come." He dropped to his knees and cut her free. His hands were shaking, but he didn't stop. "Did they hurt you?" he asked. "Not in the way they wanted," she said softly. Harris checked the windows. "No one's here." "They will be," Emily whispered. "They left to get supplies. They said there's a buyer waiting. Someone who wants broken boys. Especially ones who've been trained." From the door, Milo's voice came, quiet but clear. "They're coming." He had disobeyed and followed them in. But now he stood holding a rock, eyes wide. "3 men," he said, coming up the trail. They had minutes. Maybe less. Beck pulled Emily to her feet. She stumbled. "I can run," she said. "You can lean," he replied, wrapping her arm over his shoulder. The back door led to a ravine. The path was steep, slick with moss and rain. Beck helped her down first. Harris followed. Milo scrambled behind them. Then the shout came from above. "There! Down the hill!" Gunfire exploded, echoing through the woods. Bark splintered around them. Harris turned and fired once, hitting one of the men in the shoulder. The others ducked, then regrouped. "They'll circle around," Beck said, helping Emily down another slope. "We can't outrun bullets," Harris panted. "There's a mine shaft," Emily gasped. "Half a mile east. My husband used to trap there. If it's still standing, it might buy us time." They didn't argue. They ran. The mine entrance yawned open like a wound in the earth. Half collapsed, beams leaning but still standing. They slipped inside just as the sky opened up and rain began to fall in heavy sheets. Inside, the air was cold and damp. Old wooden rails lined the floor. A broken cart lay on its side, and the walls seemed to breathe in silence. "Farther in," Beck said, his voice low. "We'll find a bend, something we can hide behind." Milo clung to Emily's hand. She moved slower now, her breath short, every step harder than the last. Beck kept glancing back, watching her, watching the tunnel mouth. "They're coming," Harris whispered, pressing his ear to the wall. Boots. Voices. Close. Beck reached for the revolver and passed it to Emily. "If they get too close, you shoot. No warning. No questions." She hesitated only a second. Then she took it. "I won't let them take you," she said, her voice steady. He nodded once, then melted into the dark. The first man stepped inside a minute later. Cautious. Silent. Beck waited. The moment the man passed him, Beck swung a piece of broken iron straight into his temple. The man dropped. Another shouted, raising his gun, but Harris tackled him from the side, sending them both crashing into the mud. The third man raised a pistol toward Harris, but the shot never came. A gunshot echoed through the tunnel. Smoke drifted in the dim light. Emily stood at the back of the tunnel, arms steady, revolver still aimed. Her hands were shaking. "I didn't think I'd do it," she whispered. "You did," Beck said, helping her lower the weapon. "You saved us." But it wasn't over. The third man, he wasn't dead, just bleeding, reaching for his weapon with trembling fingers. Emily stepped forward and kicked it away. "Please," the man rasped. "I was just following orders." "You tell them," she said, her voice hard and full. "Tell whoever's buying, whoever's forging names, whoever's signing children away like cattle. Tell them if they come near my boys again, I won't aim for the arm." She turned her back on him. "Let him crawl home," Beck said. They left through a side shaft Beck remembered from the map. It took twice as long to reach the valley floor, but by sunset, they were clear of the hills, clear of the blood, clear of the mine. By dawn, they were home. No one talked about it for days. Then one evening, Milo asked softly as he dried dishes, "Will they come back?" Emily looked at him, quiet for a long moment. "They might," she said, "but we're stronger now." And they were. Beck built a second fence. Harris dug traps near the trees. Emily got a dog, a big, quiet hound who slept by the porch and never let the front door go unwatched. Still, the fear didn't vanish, but it changed shape. It became something they could carry, something they had survived. They planted a tree at the mine's edge, a small one, fragile but alive. In spring, it bloomed. Milo saw it first. He burst through the house, barefoot, yelling so loud the dog barked, and Emily dropped her pie tin. "It's got flowers," he shouted. "Real ones." They all ran out to see it. Tiny white blossoms covered its branches. Beck knelt beside it, brushing a petal with his fingers. "Told you it would grow," he said. Harris smirked. "You said it would die." "Yeah," Beck replied. "Sometimes things surprise you." Emily laughed. It wasn't the sound of someone trying to be brave. It was real, because the boys weren't just healing from bruises or bad dreams. They were healing from something deeper, the kind of wound you don't see, the kind that comes from being told you don't matter. But they mattered now, and so did she. That night, someone knocked on the door. Not gentle. 3 hard knocks. Beck reached for the revolver. Harris checked the window. "One rider," he whispered. "Young. Alone. Emily stepped forward. Let me. She opened the door. The boy on the porch couldn't have been older than Beck. His hat was too big, his eyes red from the road. He held a crumpled telegram in his hand. You Martha Boone? He asked. I am. He handed her the paper. Came urgent. Said if I didn't ride straight, some kids might not make it. She unfolded it, hands already trembling. 3 boys taken. Southbound wagon. Auction rumored at Porter's Mill. Need help. See. No name. But she knew who it was. She looked up at the boys. At Beck, Harris, and Milo. At the house they had built. I'll ride, Beck said, already reaching for his boots. No, Emily replied. I will. The room went still. You can't, Beck started. I'm not asking. She turned to Harris. Saddle both horses. We leave in an hour. And he did. By dawn, they were already down the ridge. Rain chasing them like it had before. The trail was rough, but they didn't stop. Not for mud. Not for tired legs. Not for fear. They found the auction before midnight. Crates. Barbed wire. 3 boys huddled in the center. One had a sack over his head. Emily didn't sneak in. She walked straight through the tents, past rifles, past guards, straight to the pen. No one stopped her. No one dared. She cut the wire. Beck and Harris lit the distraction. An old fuse, 1 stolen stick of dynamite. The explosion rocked the camp. Chaos erupted. Shouts. Horses screaming. Guns waving in all directions. Emily pulled the boys from the cage one by one. They didn't look back. They rode till dawn. Back to the blooming tree. Back home. Weeks passed. Then C arrived, a man with a ledger full of names. Boys and girls still out there, still waiting. He handed it to her without a word. Emily nodded. We'll keep going. That night, as the sun set, Beck sat on the porch. Milo curled against the dog. Harris carved quietly beside him. You think we'll ever stop running? Beck asked. Emily stepped outside with the newest boy, Jonas, tucked under her arm. No, she said, but maybe one day, no one else will have to. Jonas looked up at her, eyes wide. Are you my family now? Emily smiled, the kind that softened your bones. No, she said, we're your real one. Behind them, laughter drifted from inside. And for the first time, the storm on the horizon didn't scare anyone. Moral lesson. Sometimes the family you find is stronger than the one you lose. Pain may shape a person, but love, real love, can rebuild them. Not every battle is fought with fists. Some are won with hands that hold steady, with words that say, you are safe now. And those who choose to fight for the forgotten become the light they never had.